Do you remember we were talking about this terminal small movie I showed you on Twitter about the terminal is loading, but it was still not. It was a
Yeah,
bit
yeah.
clunky, etc. Uh, so let me see if I can share the screen here.
Homepage.
Oh wait.
Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. Now I can see the
Ah,
terminal in the XR shell window.
exactly. So it boots in 3.5 seconds, which is uh,
Mhm.
it's not the worst. And um, so the basics work, which is really really
So
great. Yeah.
let's unpack that a little bit, please. Let's imagine it's 9:41 in Brussels and I only had one coffee. When you say it boots, what is it?
So as you can see in the title bar, it is an ISO file, and this is basically a Linux operating system. And since Linux is open source and very composable, there are Linux distributions which are only a few megabytes. So this one is, I think, 1 megabyte, and it's basically this ISO is created with a technology called, or a technology, it's a tool, Linux tool called buildroot, and it allows you to sort of build a kernel, which is sort of like the core of the ISO and of the operating system. And yeah, that allows you to create a really minimal operating system, which normally runs on a real physical computer, but now it basically runs in a basically an emulator written in sort of WebAssembly, which is a sort of way to run native stuff in the browser, um, or can be used to run or to translate native stuff into yeah uh, things which work in the browser. So yeah, that is basically it. Um, it doesn't do much though. There is a Lua interpreter on it. There is VI, so it is very minimalistic. But this is a nice starting point to basically create um, uh, a Linux operating system in the shell, of which the file system is connected to the 3D space. So right now we
Yeah.
don't have any mounts, but in the future it could be mounted to the 3D scene graph and do all kinds of cool stuff.
So would it be possible then to, I think two things would be interesting. First, that you have Lua, but you also have Bash, or like what are the environment, the executable environments you have, let's say, out of the box from this ISO?
Well, out of the box, I think we have something called awk. Um,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
is a scripting language, I think. Let me see. I think everything what BusyBox has is already in
Yeah.
here. So we have. I'm curious if no, it's just shell. But
Mm.
yeah, out of the box we have all um, these things, so we can already script things in shell script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you started to show the mount points before. So now, for example, the Lua file, the test.lua that were that you used before to run,
Hmm.
is it accessible? Where is it stored? Is it stored in the browser that is accessible from the page itself? What is the file system there?
So right now, everything, all the files you see, the whole file system, it's basically embedded in the ISO file. But
Mhm, mhm.
this emulator technology, it's called V86. It does have a built-in support for it's called Plan 9. It is
Yeah.
it's a file system, and it basically has some examples, and which we can use as well to basically mount a file system or files on the server. So so you could technically sort of like extend the file system with your own files by
Yeah.
putting some extra files on the server, or just building your own ISO and sort of like
Right.
embed these files in there.
Like for example, now if you do echo one and then output that to a file and you refresh, yeah,
Yeah, so
like to whatever. Yeah.
so this one, if I reboot the page, it doesn't
Okay.
exist anymore. But that's another thing which will be implemented, or which we can implement already. You can
Uh-huh.
save the whole state of this emulator, including all the files, etc. You can save it to a JSON file. You can save it to local storage. So
Right.
there are ways to sort of like have persistency without even having to touch the server, or perhaps you want it on the server. Like there's a lot of possibilities there.
Okay. And if, for example, there was another, I don't know, if you wanted to output the temp foo file, its content from, let's say, an XOR shell widget, would it be possible today?
Yes, that is possible. There is first of all, there via JavaScript you can also control the terminal, so you can send commands from JavaScript to the terminal. Also, the other way around, you can sort of read the characters. And on top of that, and to answer your question, um, as far as I know, is you can also just access the file system, which you see here on the screen, via JavaScript. So you could, um, I haven't
Mhm.
checked if you can monitor it, but you could, I guess, it, what I've seen so far in the docs is that you can create a fully hybrid JavaScript to, this ISO session, a sort of bridge, and it could be
Yeah.
completely reactive.
And also I saw you have wget in the um, in your environment right now. If you do wget, let's say https
Yeah,
dot slash slash fabien.benito.fr,
yeah. I
what's
think
happening?
right now, like in theory, it does work with the right flags when you boot it. But right now, I haven't optimized for networking, so I think right now it does not work. But this is something we can just enable, and then we have
Okay.
curl and ping, and
Yeah.
these things work. I don't know till what extent. I can imagine that very low level things like packet sniffing, I'm not sure,
Mhm.
if that's maybe you get sort of virtual information, sort of like fake, because it's not really accessible, of course. So that's a
Mhm.
big question, like how well is it supported, and how to which degree is it emulated information.
To be to be honest, I think also there is one thing which is first it's possible at all, which is really cool. So again, it's like finding the boundary of what is not possible. So maybe indeed packet sniffing doesn't make sense because there is no low level enough access down the stack. But then the deeper question, let's say, is what is actually useful, because now that it's been proven thanks to your example that it does work, and some of the things I was asking about the file system in terms of communication and permanence and whatnot,
Hmm.
it becomes like, what do we do with this, in the sense that I don't want people to think, oh wow, we can do everything. First, no, but second, again, more importantly, is what are the new empowering usages that can come out of this. What is exciting and potentially useful, even though they were just examples, because otherwise it's like, oh, we just invented the pen and we can do everything with it. And
Right.
yeah, it's not exactly the case, and more like, how can we help people to build more, learn more, or whatever they think is useful. So yeah, just what are the most exciting ways to leverage this new possibilities?
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on its head. When I was doing this, already noticed that in the issue tracker of the V86, the emulator repository, I noticed a lot of people who were very obsessed with like all kinds of issues, which basically um, revealed that they were disappointed that it doesn't do everything what their Linux desktop does. So they were saying it can't do this, it can't do that. Why can it not do this? And I think this is why I'm now writing the MOTD message of the day. I think when it boots, it should maybe immediately say like this is not an attempt to emulate a Linux desktop. I think
Yeah.
like you said, we should perhaps just stay away from it and see, you know, what could a minimal sort of a minimal operating system, Linux operating system, how could it augment, what we do in XR? Maybe there are
Mhm.
some paradigms which we can actually reuse. For example, I was thinking about for example, tail. Tailing something could be interesting. I mean, tailing the JavaScript console, or that's just a simple
Mhm,
a
mhm.
mechanism which might be handy. But I think we should really look at it through the lens of like, if we have a very vanilla Linux environment, what could be handy, and
Okay.
what should we not try to emulate?
Yeah. So one thing, if you do a tab twice now, I think it should try to complete with a list of commands, maybe.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, indeed.
So I think what could be interesting is some of those commands are pipeable. They might all be, but I would assume like a big amount of them. And then having a couple of them, like echo whatever, and then pipe said replace ever, but not never. So something a little bit, yeah, something that use couple of pipes basically. I think what might be interesting is to then visualize it as blocks, like 3D blocks in the environment around the console or the terminal here, and then start to be at the interplay between grabbing things. So here the unit would be a command and its output, and then piping it to something else. And I think that might be a way to give another way to interact with a system that has been useful for decades now. Like I started to learn about Unix commands a long time ago, and what's
Hmm.
crazy is decades later, in the time of XR, LLMs, and whatever 3D printing, etc., it still remains powerful. But now what we have with us, with the VR headset and XR headsets, are ways to play with information. So I think I would tend to think it's just an intuition, let's say, but getting the best of both. So, for example, six and manipulation with the hand tracking
Hmm.
of the primitives that are empowering in a shell. So those commands, I think that might be an interesting thing to explore.
Yeah, that's a very very good point. There are some examples in the milestone document as well, which basically point into this direction as well. I'm not completely, I don't know them by heart. Oh yeah, one small thing, just because it was so frustrating, I spent the whole evening yesterday trying to figure out why the keyboard um, terminal was not updating in VR only,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it turned out that this V86, I just want to have it on the record, was using this bad boy, the request animation frame function, and it turns out. on Quest, if A-frame is using this one, all bets are off. So this V86 was basically using this request animation frame after basically A-frame was initialized, which means that it didn't get called anymore. So there were no no updates happening in VR. And then what I basically did, I replaced window.request animation frame to my own one, which is basically the tick function of an A-frame component. So that's how I worked around that problem. But to find, in the source code of V86, this issue was really a really bizarre exploration.
It's an important one also because, and actually it's probably one of the discussion we started a while ago. I did not use this simulator, but I used something called WebVM, WebVM from Lean Technology.
Mhm.
And if I look at it, so WebVM, and I'll put it, well, actually, I'll try to share my screen too.
Oh, we have 3 minutes, by the way, before your next
Yes.
call.
When I did something similar, and it's exactly the problem that you mentioned, and I did not, and that was, let me check, let me pause it. That was, when was it? Yeah, a couple of months ago. Because indeed, I think it's really, I started without VR
Hmm.
and just WebVM. So again, it's in the browser and you get a shell in it. And I'm in XR. So if I have a Bluetooth keyboard, I can type on it. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. You have also connectivity with Tailscale. So you can get things, but ideally this is just 2D. So to me, that's not super exciting. It's one step,
Hmm.
but it's not enough. But so here I brought it to XR,
Hmm.
but I could not type in with the keyboard because the focus was lost. So the rendering was okay, but no keyboard. So I'm
Hmm.
betting that this is exactly what you described, that the request animation frame is also getting stolen. And I would be curious if this web VM used the same stack in order of like, I guess, terminal.js or term x. No, well, anyway, the same way.
Xterm.js.
Yes, 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 that exactly. Does it use it?
Well, the V86 does not use it. It just, I think it has something similar built in. Or, I'm not really sure about it. I haven't seen the term Xterm in the source code. Um, but yeah, it's highly likely that I know that Xterm can use the canvas, and usually the canvas uses a request animation frame for
Yeah.
fast animation. So probably that got stalled as well. And to be honest, this is a great opportunity to basically maybe even decide what I want is to make XR Shell a plural environment where we can have multiple types of shells, uh, multiple ISOs, and this web VM, if we can fix it, then might be helpful for people to run it in VR as well.
Yes, I think it's interesting also once it's been done, probably in a couple of times to have alternative backends, let's say. We've done it one way. We understand that it's feasible, even that it makes sense, that can be efficient. But who knows? I don't want to be negative, but maybe WebVM, the main maintainers are going to move on to something unrelated. Maybe it's going to be another emulator. So if there can be an alternative way to do it, I feel that it's a lot more resilient.
True, true. That's a good point. All right, so yeah, this is all very exciting. We're moving forward. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. I see you. You have to go to your meeting. Fabien would
Indeed,
like to speak, it says.
yes. I must go, but it's indeed exciting steps. And you see, I started to think about this with my hands and in the air and floating. And in terms of, I have also the Lego kit behind me, and I think anytime
Hmm.
that we can make things more tangible and empowering, because this is cool in terms of getting the basics of programming and getting, let's say, something tangible with blocks. But those blocks, the powerful blocks, in my opinion, come also from the Unix history. And I think when I did actually, I really must go, but I did a quick demo last week where you took a thing. Actually, I have a 3D model of myself with a tie
Wow.
that I, like 10 years ago, maybe I forgot, a long time ago. And I did a little demo where you take an object, a 3D model, and then you take an operator, let's say multiplicated, and then a value, a number, let's say 7, and then you put the three together so they stack, and then you get 7 little mini me. And I think, okay, it's a silly example, but I think for arithmetics, it works for kids, for example. But if you imagine this, but with instead of multiplication, other functors, or so for example, the commands of a shell. And here, instead of you can have a 3D model, but you can have a 3D model or text or both. Again, there's composability in space, but not with like a couple of operators, like in my example, but the entire possibility that we're even used to. I think it's exciting possibilities.
Yeah, especially since it's human text as well, or human language. One command or one shell script, let's say hello, could be triggered via Vosk browser, and then you get this really nice synergy between a shell command and a human voice. That could be very interesting in XR as well.
Indeed, indeed. Lot to
All
explore.
right.
But
Yeah. All right. Have a nice day, and thanks a lot for all the thoughts and ideas.
my pleasure. Have a lovely day and a good weekend. Take care.
All right. Cheers. Bye bye.